Heskey, and I am a resident of the township of McMillan. And there's been work going on. Louder, you want to? There we go. Okay, I'll start over. Welcome tonight. I'm Heidi Heskey. I'm a resident of the township of McMillan. And we just wanted to get some information to our residents and neighbors because I just like to know more. And many other people I'm finding out also would like to know more. And so there's some people here that have some information. They've done lots of research, and they're going to provide some information for the community. So first, I'd like to introduce Trans Bennett, and she is from the town of Day, and then also Rebecca over there in DeGeating. She's also from the town of Day, and Wendy is from the town of Green Valley. So please ask any questions at the very end of our presentations. You're welcome to ask anything, and I think that covers it. So.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your evening to come out and see us. We've done a few of these informational meetings now. We're just like you, just residents, but we've been working on this for 2 years now, at least. And in that process, we have talked to thousands of people of all different sorts and walks of life about stories about the industrial wind complexes and solar complexes as well. Today, we're just going to bring you some pretty basic information, a lot of it that came from the folder that was handed out to each township here in the last couple of months from Alliant Energy about the project that's going on in in Green Valley, town of Day, town of Cleveland, town of Plain, and then town of McMillan. So this is where we're going to base the information out of, and we're just going to kind of talk about what's in there and what we have learned over the years. We're also going to introduce you to the ordinances, which every single other township in this project has adopted, except for McMillan. So this is why the McMillan residents were the ones that wanted to put it on, mostly for their residents' benefit. So I guess we'll just get to it. It gets kind of long sometimes. So we're going to go through the agenda, and then at the end, we're going to try to have lots of times for questions and answers. So please bear with us. So the whole thing starts with the Wisconsin state statutes. And I know this get a little boring, but this is where all the laws begins, right? It all starts in Madison. So the state statute that our ordinance is built on is 66.0401. And this is the statute that go in and regulates what industrial wind and solar can and cannot do in the state of Wisconsin, together with the PSC 128. But what I want to point out in this, and we're not going to go through the bill line for line, it's just the exceptions in the law, because that is what the ordinances are built over. So the law says that no political subdivision may create any restrictions directly in the installation of wind energy systems that are more restricted than what's set under the commission, except when it comes to serving, protecting the health and safety of their residents. So there are exceptions to this law. Most of the times when you hear wind and solar companies talking about this law, they will read you the entire first section. And if you want to, we will gladly hand it out to you. But they always leave out the exceptions, and there are 3 of them. Our ordinances are based on protecting the health and safety of the residents in our area. It is not created to keep out wind or solar. It's just created so that we think there's at least fair rules and regulations so that we can protect the people who have to live around them. The current laws and regulations are controlled by the PSC, is the Public Service Commission, which is all set by people that is put there by Governor Evers. Now, they're supposed to update the rules periodically, but the last time the rules were updated was in 2012. Now, turbines back in 2012 were a lot smaller than what we're seeing today, but none of the other regulations that come with them have been updated. So we're still building off a really, really old set of rules. So that would just be my first point on that. So we've gone through the Hub City Wind Farm folder, and we will go through kind of point for point here what some of the things that they're pointing out, right? So a lot of things we've seen both in the contracts, because we have also studied their contract, and we did have a lawyer look at their contracts as well, and within the folder, is that they use terminology is very vague at times. So they will use estimate, they will use subject to change, they will use to our best discretion, which is all great and dandy, but it just means that nothing is set in stone as what they put in this folder. And I just want you to be aware of that, because the folder reads great. We'll all be millionaires and the towns will flourish forever, right? Just know that is not a promise, okay? It's just a possibility. So that was just my first mark. All right. So the first thing that we were very concerned about is what's called the joint development agreement. And a lot of these companies, they like to come to the towns and they ask the towns to adopt a joint development agreement, which is what you saw down at the Tarasoga Solar Project. We advise not to sign these agreements as a township, because a lot of the times you're actually giving away more your rights than what you already have. The towns already have rights to say that if a company comes and wrecks our roads, they have to, build those roads back up to what the standards was before. But when you sign these agreements, what we found in Saratoga was that they ended up not having to do as much as they would have if they didn't sign the agreement. The agreement also allowed for a secondary project to go ahead in Saratoga. So they were first building a solar farm, and then the second project came into place, and they're now having a battery storage facility as well. So we are very, very concerned with the joint development, the JDAs, joint development agreements. So one of the things that we were very concerned about is the wildlife in the area and the impact that it might have on both my dairy farms, so my cows, or the deer population we hunt, or the birds, and everything else around. Now they say in the folder that they're supposed to do what's called an environmental assessment, but what they really should be doing is an environmental study, which they usually never have to, because the PSC don't enforce the regulations, so they don't need to. Now, if they had to do an EIS, they would probably find a lot more issues with some of these turbines being so close to, for example, eagle's nest, right? So right now they can build a turbine 600 foot from an eagle's nest. And we all know that turbines kill birds. Lots of eagles in our area, probably a lot of dead eagles. But in general, we don't see them having to do these, so it's a big red flag for us that they might not be as concerned with the people who live around these things as we thought they should be. And if they had to do one, that would be great. It's just unfortunate that the PSC don't enforce that part. So I know that the McMillan Wildlife Area, since we're in McMillan, they have a big crane population. And Heidi, could you talk to the people from the Cranes Association?
Yes, I live next to a little Plain River, so I see a lot of the migratory birds flying back and forth, geese, cranes, everything else, lots of birds. And so that was a concern for me, because I really, truly enjoy being outdoors and seeing that. And it was a concern because I don't want them to go away. So I happened to call. I just wanted to know, what do they do, and if they've used such film. And this is what she told me. And this is the response. She said, attached to this find some publications to help inform proper siting of the wind farm. Sure, they go forward. The first to deal with the whooping cranes, which are not currently at the McMillan Marsh, but we have every hope that they could occupy one day. A wind farm in the vicinity would likely be a detriment to the whooping cranes, deciding on the marsh as a breeding area if the turbines were too close. This would have a direct impact on the success of the reintroduction and eventual downlisting of the species, thus a concern for the whooping crane reintroduction partnership. There's a paper concerning the sandhills wintering in Texas, but some of the lessons learned regarding how wind farms affect the cranes' use of an area would apply to breeding populations in Wisconsin as well. And as she provided documentation for it, the studies they've been doing, many of them happen to be for multiple years. And she told me personally, she said normally if they would call and and she usually does a recommendation of the setback of 15 kilometers to give them plenty of room so that wouldn't alter their migratory process. And there's plenty of them coming in and out of McMillan Marsh. I'm not sure if many may or may not be aware, but we do have the crane watchers. Every year, they park all along Highway E, they park along Elm Street Road, and they're constantly watching and keeping track of them. And it's one of the species that are very rare. I think we only have like maybe 75 breeding pairs in Wisconsin. So it was on the endangered species list, and it's something that we should keep an eye on. So I just didn't want that to go away. It's something that gives me quality of life, and we want that to be altered, the flight plans.
Thank you. So I guess we can start by looking a little bit deeper into the project here. So like Alliance has said they want to build 20 to 25 turbine sets per township, not for the entire project. So 20 to 25 turbines in your township, my township, and yours. Now we have a map over there. That is the Brighton and O'Plain project that's already very, very close to going underway. They're doing a lawsuit right now, is the only reason it's not being built. Now they have about the same, 20 to 25 turbines in their two townships, and that's what it would look like, just so you have a general idea of how close these things are going to be to everybody. The law states that a turbine can be 1,250 feet from your house. And these turbines are the ones we're looking at here. They say are 4.3 megawatts, which doesn't mean a lot to us. So what we look it up and find is that they're 600 foot to 650 foot. That means a 450-foot tower and a 150-foot wingspan. They're big. So for size, you can take the Rib Mountain. Rib Mountain is 700 feet. So there are a lot of them, and they're going to be big. They're going to have a big impact on our communities. I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we usually talk about when our fire chief is here. So our fire chief is actually part of our group. That'd be Tim Carey. He's out of the state, or out of the state right now. But he's done these presentations a couple of times. So some of the things he pointed out is that these turbines are such a big project around here, and our fire departments are so small, so they're always really concerned about any issues that might come from fire or somebody getting hurt or anything such like that. So in case of a fire, currently what the Stratford Fire Department would do is to let them burn. They don't have any way to get them put out. They can't do anything with them. So they would let them burn and then hopefully make the rest of the area safe. He's also very concerned that if somebody gets hurt while they're working on these turbines, now these companies are going to have special people obviously hired to do maintenance and stuff on them. But the turbine themselves, the fire department can actually not enter the premise of that acre or 2 acre lot that they sit on. So let's say a guy had a heart attack on the top of this turbine. What they're advised to do as our fire department here and EMTs is to call the company in Madison, and the Madison department will send somebody out to help the person. Now you can imagine what that person's going to look like when they get to them. So that's obviously a concern. The other thing that we've been looking into quite a bit is the medical helicopters. Now these turbines are placed fairly close to each other. So I dairy farm in the town of Day, and I live just a mile north, a mile east out of Rosalvo. And the way they're planned, that's what we understand next to my farm, would basically be 3 of them within a mile. Now, I don't know how much space a medical helicopter needs, but I know they fly under their discretion. So if they don't feel like it's safe to land, they will not land. So there's not going to be any statement saying out there that, oh, you have a wind turbine project or a solar project, they won't land. That's not it. But it is up to their discretion if they feel it's safe for the pilot to land. Now, I also talked to one of my young friends who just became an airline pilot, commercial pilot, and he says that he has lots of experience flying over these turbines, and they create tremendous turbulence. So another side of this is that there's actually a petition at the Marshfield Airport right now, because one of the turbines in the Brighton project is already in the pathway and the flight patterns for the Marshfield Airport. Now, if they're going to build another 25 to 20 turbines per our townships, these are going to be even closer. Now, I'm guessing the flight school in there is not going to be a flight school anymore, because the students will think it's too dangerous to fly over these. Also, the medical helicopters or other helicopters will have to fly another 150 feet higher than what they usually do to get away from that turbulence. So it does have an impact on our health and safety in this area. Going forward, in their presentation here, they talk a lot about all the money that the county is going to get and that the towns are going to get from these projects. And the numbers that you see in the folder, now each township should have their folders already and they should be available at your township. That if you can read from you on, I know we also have extra copies. They tell you that you're going to make, a lot of money over 30 years. So let's just go with the annual, right? So they're saying Marathon County is going to make $283,000 annually. And the towns, which this is not per township, this is for all the township, will make $216,000 a year. But this is only when the project runs at 100% capacity, and it's only if they run for those 30 years, right? Which is when you look into it, they never do. So they might throw out a lot of big numbers at you. It's no different than if you sign a contract, you're going to be a millionaire in 30 years. Well, if the project only lasts 7 to 10, you're not going to be near $1 million. You're going to get something out of it, but not the $1 million. So the money they're telling you that you're going to get might not be there. I want to go to the next page. Oh yeah. So when they say that, I looked up what the average lifespans of these farms are in Wisconsin and through the U.S. just to have an idea of what a normal is. We know what we're seeing from talking to people out there, a lot of people in Iowa that are living around these, and they say usually between 7 to 15 years, then they're not operational anymore or they're not going to fix them anymore. That's what we were hearing. But I figured I'd look it up and take a look at it as well. And what we figured the average was in 2015, the average lifespan of a wind farm is 5.5 years. In 2020, it was 7, and they're shooting for 2030 to be 14. So, they might promise you 30 years, but that's not necessarily what you're going to get. 2025, right now, they're saying an average of 10 years is what they run. Also, you should know, since I read the contract, I guess I can throw this in here, that the contract that you're signing is a 30-year contract for Alliant with 3 10-year extendable terms of 10 years. So it's actually a 60-year contract on your property, your entire property. But Alliant actually holds a 30-day contract. They can terminate any time at 30 days in the contract is over, but you cannot. So it's just something worth to keep in mind. So putting these in our towns and counties are obviously going to have a big impact on, well, they say construction is going to be a year, so they're going to smash our roads for a year, and they say after construction is done, we will come and fix them back up, but it's going to be after construction is done. The Saratoga project was done, surprised when they said, well, we're going to do a million-year construction, but now we're going to do a battery storage facility. So that's a kicker. But another thing is I'm sorry. No, I want to turn. Yeah. Yeah, I just want to see which way I want to go first. I think we'll do this one first. Okay, I'm sorry. So like we said, the turbines are like 600 foot tall, and with 2025 over in the area, it's gonna create a lot of effect on our communities. What I didn't tell you before is that the base of those turbines are about 55 feet in circumference, and then they're sitting on a pile of concrete and rebar. So they're going to go down deep, and one of the things that I, as a dairy farmer, was concerned about was the stray voltage that could create for our community. So we all know that there's stray voltage out there. We all kind of know where it's running currently, but every time you do changes in the ground, the stray voltage has a tendency to move. So if you build 3 turbines around your farm, I'm concerned that all the extra rebar and concrete, that these currents might change. So stray voltage on a farm is detrimental. I've talked to several farmers now that has been living next to either new substations or project that ended up with stray voltage, and it basically puts them out of business. The problem is that under the law, there's no provision for small farms for stray voltage. The only farms that even have to have a study done to see if they have straight voltage from a project is K-Frost. So 1,000 animal units and above, and they have to live within 2 miles then of the current project. And if they're outside the 2 miles, they only have to do studies for those. I noticed that we had a farmer in southwest Wisconsin who went out. They did a 3-year study on the farm. They were next to a new substation that was created with their project. They did all the studies. She took all that data in front of the PSC, and the PSC said, "Thank you very much, but we just don't agree with your findings." She goes, "Well, my cows are dying from straight voltage." And she goes, "They go, well, we have this study that was done 20 years ago, which was paid for by the energy companies when they did it. We're going to stick with that." So even though there might be some data out there, I don't think we're going to get any help from Madison or the people who are sitting in the rules right now, which is unfortunate. So when you put these turbines up, one of the things that people usually say, well, you know, what's it really going to do to our community, right? So we're going to see property values drop, which is what we usually see. And logically, you can just say, well, if you want to sell your house and you live around 20 turbines, how much of a market is going to be for your house? So that's one of the things people are very concerned with. But the bad ultimate reality is that your farmland all of a sudden gets more valuable. So you see prices tick up on rent, which we're already seeing a little bit of in this area, but not dramatically. In southern Wisconsin, we're already seeing land rent about $15,000 an acre. That's a far cry. It's probably not something I can afford. Now, if prices are going to skyrocket like that, you're going to put out a lot of small farms. You're just not going to be able to stay in business anymore. So I think a really good question for you as residents is, what kind of township do you want to live in? What kind of community do you want to have going forward? So if you have all these wind projects coming in, what's that going to do to future developments? Are you going to see that subdivision go in, or are you going to see that business come to this area, or are they going to leave? And what's that going to do to your revenue basis? The same thing as with your lower property values, you're also going to have less income coming in that way. So these projects have a really wide and far reach into our communities. We did talk to a realtor. He was at our last meeting when we did the solar presentation for Town of Day. He was not able to make it today. And one of the things that he was really concerned about is they came from an area with a lot of hunting property. People would come up there from the southern part of the state to go hunting. But when these projects roll in, what you're seeing is that there's a huge disruption in your deer patterns and your animal patterns, your wildlife, because they don't like being around them. So he was also concerned that other properties, not necessarily just your house, but like recreational properties would go down in value as well. And like I said, you know, if your deer don't like being around them, what's it going to do to my cows? My cows can't leave. They have to stay where we're at. I can't help them. If you want to know more about what energy is good energy, or what energy is actually cost efficient and renewable energy, there's a guy named Isaac Orr, and we have some information on how to see his Substack is called Energy Bad Boys. He really dives into the details on what's the difference in nuclear power to coal power to wind power to solar power, and how do they rank and how valuable it is to us. So I'll list them as he ranks them. If you want to know more, I suggest that you go and dive into that. So right now what we're seeing is that your nuclear power is your most efficient, then you have your natural gas, your coal plants, your hydro, and then you have your wind and your solar as the two lowest, best, and efficient way of creating energy. So with all these new renewable energies going online, and it is hundreds of projects across Wisconsin, it's not just us, it's a lot of them. They're also taking coal plants offline. So now we're swapping energy, right? So we're taking a very reliable, continuous source of energy and putting it in place with intermittent energy, which is not as reliable, which is then going to strain our grid. So this is the bad secret behind it. The Wisconsin grid is already strained. So if we're really going to swap out all these projects, we're going to end up with conditions like you're seeing in California. We're going to end up with blackouts. That is at least what they're warning from the MISO organization. That's our grid here in Wisconsin. So intermittent power, you know, huge effect on your local communities. and maybe some revenue, but I'm not promising as much as they're promising in the folder. So now I'm talking about the power grid. Okay, so we're getting turbines, right? And you think, well, we're just going to hook them up to our current power grid and we'll be good to go. No, we can't do that because our power grid is not big enough to actually roll the power out to where it needs to go. So not only are we going to get these turbines put up, we're also going to get new power lines and we're going to get a new substation. So what we figured out is that it looks like the new substation, which is attached to the Brighton on the Plain project, which I'm guessing is the project that Line Energy project is going to tie into in the long run, is going to be up north of Rock Oil. So they're going to build a big new beautiful substation up there, and then they're going to start updating all our power lines throughout the whole area. So when we talk power lines, a lot of people get a little worried because then you start talking about eminent domain. This is not something we necessarily know, but it's something you should be aware of. It could be happening. I think we want to talk about Brighton on the Plain for a little bit, and then we'll go back and or do you want me to stay with straight voltage first? I'm going to let Wendy talk a little bit.
So I'm not a big public speaker, so bear with me while I read my notes here. I'm from the town of Green Valley, and I'm here just as a concerned resident. I went to, I learned about renewable projects about 2 years ago at an informational meeting that was like this, that was put on by Farmland First. And I became involved to try to protect my town from the things that I learned there. What I was told there was that there was a project over in Clark County. I really didn't think it would affect us at all, but I thought it would be a good thing to help the neighbors. And I thought it would be something that if we ever had any issues, it would be nice to have people come and help us, the other townships come and help us as well. So that's mainly the reason that I got involved. So in April of 2023, my town of Green Valley voted to adopt our wind health and safety ordinance. And then 6 months later, in October of 2023, which again I thought would never happen, we were notified in an email from Alliant of a wind project being developed involving our town. So that was 2 years ago. And now a year and a half later, so the town of Day had received their binders from Alliant back in December or January. And I wasn't aware of any of the other 5 towns that were in this project that had received the binders. We hadn't received ours. So I kept asking my town board, did we get our binders? Did we get our binders? Finally, after the February town board meeting on the 11th, we had still not received them. Apparently they were delivered to our township, or to the town hall on the 16th of February. We were formally notified with the binders, I guess, about this project that now has a name called Hub City. So in order for a project like this to move forward, it's my understanding that the developer needs a certain amount of land secured for the project, among other things. And my curiosity was piqued about the land that was signed for this project. And so I went to the courthouse, because this is all a matter of public record, and I wanted to find out the number of acres that are signed up into this project currently. And Trin asked me to report on that here tonight, so that's what I was going to do. So she said previously there are the 5 towns that are involved in this project: Day, McMillan, Eau Plaine, Green Valley, and Cleveland. Okay, so I was looking there. First, when I went, I couldn't find the information because you need to know who the developer is, and it's not in there listed under Alliant Energy. I then found out later that it's under Wisconsin Power and Light. So I went back and I was able to find some information. What I found out was that 4 of the 5 towns in this project have land signed into leases totaling approximately 5,900 acres currently, split between 17 different landowners. As of 2:30 yesterday afternoon, the town of Eau Plaine has no acres signed into this particular project. They have land in the Marathon Wind project in their town. So Cleveland has a total of 324 acres that have currently been signed. Green Valley has 739 acres signed. McMillan has 964 acres currently signed, and the records there showed that somebody just signed up 2 days ago, some land. And then the town of Day has a total of 3,897 acres signed into this project. This information again came directly from public records at the Register of Deeds office in Marathon County. The staff there, when I go there, is always very helpful for me. They log me on the computer and help me find what I need. But it does take a lot of hours to compile this information. So I was up there for hours writing things down because you can't take pictures of the screens there either. You can't call there and ask for a list. There's not a list. So don't call there and ask them for a list. This is something that I've compiled myself with information that I have found there. If you want to know how to get that information for yourself, I'd be glad to help you go through the process of doing that. So the next thing on my list to talk about is an update on the lawsuit that's been brought. Do you want to do that now? Okay. Against the Marathon County towns of Brighton and Eau Plaine. They're part of the Marathon Wind project that is being developed by a company called EDP Renewables. The lawsuit was brought by EDP Renewables, which is a large corporation backed by the Chinese Communist Party. And we do have a flyer over there. Marty Mockton had done a Substack article regarding that, if you want to find out further information regarding that. But that's who EDP is backed by. Martin Mockton he's a contract attorney of many years. He has reviewed many of these land contracts for landowners who, well, I guess he became involved by a friend of his, asked him to review a land contract, and he became very alarmed at the very one-sidedness of these contracts that shifts a lot of liability onto the landowner. And like Trin said earlier, the contracts are 60 to 67 years long. These are decades-long contracts that run with the land. They do not run with the person. And so it's something that is going to be devastating to our communities for a long time, if that's how you want to look at it. But so Marty has been very vocal in warning landowners about the one-sidedness of these land lease contracts. A brief background on the lawsuit and why it's relevant. The governing body for our state regarding industrial scale wind facilities, like Trin previously said, is the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, often referred to as the PSC. To my understanding, they created the rules and regulations that are currently in place for these projects. When these rules and regulations were put into place, the turbines were about 400 feet tall, which is what you said. Oh, that's what they were? Okay. And those regulations, again, have not been updated since the beginning, even though they're supposed to be reviewed and updated every 5 years. So now the turbines that we're going to be having proposed here are 600 to 700 feet tall, and Trin already talked about that. The ordinances that our towns adopted serve to protect our residents with stricter regulations than what the PSC has in place regarding the health, safety, and well-being of our communities. EDP claims that the ordinances are not enforceable, and that is why they commenced their lawsuit. The language in the state statutes that Trin referred to earlier that they're relying on for their lawsuit has been interpreted in different ways. And whether or not the town ordinances are enforceable has never been determined in a court of law, and that is why the towns are standing their ground now at this time. A legal decision one way or the other will set precedent, and then we'll know how things will move forward from there. According to the courthouse documents that I looked at also, this case was commenced in early June of 2024. There was a motion from EDP to try to continue with the project during the lawsuit, but the judge denied that in December, so that's why that project is somewhat halted at this point in time. Then there was a motion by Farmland First to intervene in the suit, which would have given a stronger defense to the towns, but the judge did deny that in December also. Recently there were motions to dismiss the case that were filed by both of the towns, and the most recent items on the calendar are responsive briefs due in 2 days here, and the judge's ruling then on the motions to dismiss, which is scheduled to be issued on or about May 23rd, 2025. according to the scheduling order that was signed on January 17th of 2025 here. The town of Brighton, maybe you guys have saw it when you came in, they issued a request for some monetary donations to aid in the lawsuit. And again, the lawsuit will affect every town that has a wind health and safety ordinance in place. Brighton has exhausted the $50,000 insurance reserve for their legal defense and has paid an additional $16,500 to date in the defense of these ordinances. I did speak with the town chair last night of Brighton, and he confirmed that Farmland First has made good on their promise of the financial support that they promised earlier. They've also received a few other donations to date as well. And they would be very appreciative for any and all financial support from members of the community, and are also hoping that other towns that have the wind health and safety ordinances would also consider contributing to this fund to help offset the costs. There are approximately 17 towns in Wisconsin that have these ordinances, so if anybody here happens to be from one of those towns, please take a copy of the donation request back, maybe and ask your town leaders if they would be willing to do this. And that's about all I have.
So when Wendy said that we looked at the law earlier, we didn't just look at it and read it the way we wanted to. We actually talked to John Spiros, and we had the legislative lawyers in Madison interpret the law for us before this ordinance were put in place in Talladega and before we started suggesting other townships to do so. Now, according to the legislative lawyers, they're saying that there are gray area in the law, and that we can have these ordinances, and it will benefit from going through a lawsuit. Which is why when we're passing these ordinances, we're very, very hopeful that all the townships will stand together and support Brighton and Maclean so we get a clear answer on the law through these lawsuits. Now, while the lawsuit is going, as Wendy mentioned, the projects cannot continue on. They cannot start building. So we will either have an answer, and then we will know if we will be protected or not. But we did put it through some pretty good lawyers. We didn't just come up with this on our own. So I just wanted to make that very clear. Let's go through the last little bit here of the folder, and we'll start taking some questions, because that's usually what most people like to do. So they're saying that these turbines are renewable, and the newer turbines that they're coming out with have fiberglass blades now. Now that sounds great, because then you could cut them up and you could put them into concrete later, right? Well, when they're sitting next to my farm field and I use my fields for cow feed, when those fiberglass blades break down, then they start throwing fiberglass shards into my field. Now, my equipment has magnets on it that'll pick out metal and other things, but they sure will not pick out fiberglass. So this is something I'm very concerned about if that was to happen. They're also worried for some residents that have hosted the turbines is that there's a lot of soil compaction around that building site as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. When I talk about the fiberglass shards, that's one thing, but even before they start bringing down in the winter time, they usually freeze. And when those turbines, they turn around, they are throwing down icicles off of those blades. So snowmobile clubs are very concerned about what this will do to their patterns of where they can run their snowmobiles. Just in case this were to happen in an area, this is something they would have to be concerned about. Now, according to the Lion contract, the newer version that I have, if you're a hunter and you sign your land up, you actually have to ask permission to hunt on your own land, or get other permissions to hunt on your own land from a lion. And I'm guessing the lion would say that, this is fine, you just go ahead and do it, but it actually says it in the contract. So as much as they might just let you do it, they could hold you to the statement that it says. A lot of things that are not in here are things like shadow flicker, infrasound, bad bird kills, impact on your deer population and the people who live around these things. It doesn't say anything about that in here. And as we've heard from thousands of people out there now, is that people that live next to these have consequences of living next to them. So let's just start with shadow flicker. Now, shadow flicker is when you have a house in the path of the turbine and the sun. When the sun stands just right through those blades, it creates a flicker effect. It's like somebody turning the lights on and off in your house every 15 seconds. And it might just only last for 20 minutes a day, but that's 20 minutes a day in your house where the lights are going on and off like crazy. They also produce something that's called infrasound. And as hard as it is to understand what stray voltage is, infrasound might be even harder. So if you have the base of your turbine and those blades spinning, every time a blade passes that base, it creates a infra-woof sound that some people get affected by. Now, I'm guessing I don't get affected by it. I can't feel stray voltage when I walk through the old barn, but I know my mother-in-law could feel it in her knees really bad. So I would be concerned for somebody like my mother-in-law who might be affected by this. Now, what we're hearing from some people is that they get nausea, they get migraines, they get sleep deprivation. Like a lot of people are having a really hard time sleeping around these things. And there isn't really a whole lot of cohesive studies out there on why this is happening. Also, there's a lot of money out there not to study why this is happening. So one way or the other. But this is some things that people are saying about the consequences of living around these. And I want to be very clear. Not everybody has problems, but it is a possibility that it could happen. Birds and bat kills are pretty obvious. Wisconsin have a lot of endangered bats, so that's something we could definitely look into too. And like I said, it does irritate the deer population. Usually they will tell you that, after the construction year, they'll all come back and they'll live around these places, no problem. But that's not quite what we're seeing in other places. Not that I could probably be without a couple of deer. I got a lot over my, a little too many. So when they say they're renewable, they're not quite right about that. There's like 600 gallons of hydraulic oil in these things. They're all steel. The fiberglass blades, the concrete and rebar in the ground. For decommissioning, they actually only go down 36 to 48 inches, and they will take that out, but the rest stays in the dirt. So whenever this project is done and over with, if it actually gets decommissioned, all those concrete and rebar is going to stay in the ground where they are. The blades usually come off. You guys see them laying around. Famously, there's 5 major turbine blade cemeteries in the U.S. where they go and bury them. And then the rest, kind of gets scrapped out. It's steel. So they're not just a net zero way of creating energy. Lots of stuff goes into them. And I'm not even touching on the copper and the mining that goes into it. That we don't have to touch on that. So decommissioning. This is one of my major fears with these projects. Because what I'm seeing around the country is that not a whole lot of these go down. They all get put up. And then we see them sitting out there, and some of them are turning, and some of them are not, and some of them are leaking oil. But I don't see a whole lot of them disappearing after they go up. So I looked into it a little bit, and I just started with Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, there's only been one wind farm that's actually been 100% decommissioned and taken back down. And now the current one that there being a lot of talk about is Kewaunee County Wind Farm. Now, that hasn't been in operation since 2018, but it's still sitting there. So that's a lot of years to just sit idle, and they're still waiting for it to come down. In the U.S., the decommissioning rates are relatively low. They're saying about 2% of all the current wind farms out there are not in operation. There's about 20 farms out of the 1,000 wind facilities that they have in the U.S. So my concern with decommissioning was always that what if the company goes bankrupt? And what if the company sells to another company, that sells to another company, that sells to another company, which is what we're seeing in a lot of other places? Who has the final, who's responsible for taking these down? So when push comes to shove, let's say it gets sold, the last company goes bankrupt, the decommissioning goes back on the local, your local townships and your local counties to remove these. Now, a 600-foot turbine costs about $500,000 to take down. So I don't know how many of these we can afford to take down as a county or as a township, but it's something worth considering just in case that these doesn't come down from the developer side. That is also one of the things that are in the ordinances. If anybody wants to read the ordinances or see the ordinances, they're publicly available on the Town of Days website and in several other places. We always suggest that if a township wants to pass the wind ordinance, the solar ordinance, or the battery storage ordinance, that you have an annual meeting or a meeting where a lot of people are showing up you inform what's in the ordinance, and you actually have a vote. So is that the towns actually decide what it is that's right for the township. We just give you the tools to pass these and a bit of information to go with them. So one of the final things that I want to touch on today is that over on our informational section over there is a petition. And the petition is from Concerned Citizens of America, the Wisconsin chapter. It's in the display over there. We are right now petitioning Tony Evers to not veto AB 7 and SB 3. So that would be our Assembly bill and our Senate bill, and they're going to hit the floor in 2025. These two bills will return local approval over wind and solar project to the towns, meaning that the PSC or the state can't just go over the head of all the residents out here and not ask if they're willing to live next to these things. It has to get approval by the township and by the county and by the PSC. So we would really appreciate if you sign the petition, if you agree with this. What we can promise you will happen is if these two bills pass with no supermajority, Tony Evers is going to veto them and make them go away. That is very, very clear. Now, nobody has gotten a supermajority for a bill in 40 years in the state of Wisconsin. So what we could really use help with is the petition, and then call your local representatives, all of them. Your assemblymen, your senators, your U.S. congressmen, call all of them and say, you need to vote for these two bills. It is very important. At least if these two bills go through, we at least have the chance in the townships and in the counties to say yes or no to these projects. And you should have a say. At least that's what we believe. So, Heidi, should we see if there's any questions from the crowd today?
Who would like to have our first question?
It's not necessarily a question, but maybe a little bit of experience that I have. First of all, I'm Bernie. My wife Jen and I, we own the property here and run these two businesses. So you get an idea of who we are. We live in Stratford, but we own this property here in McMillan. And just to give you a little idea of where I come from, I don't think anybody here likes to speak to overeducated people, do they? I'm not one of them. All D's, few C's. But I do have a college degree in agriculture, and I have a master's degree in ag education. And one of the courses I took in college is my favorite course, was called Alternate Energy Systems. And Dr. Jones, he's the professor there, we went over all kinds of energy systems. And he, to reiterate what these ladies said, flat out, wind and solar are the most inefficient by far. And this is a professor. And it's real funny. We went over everything, ethanol and burning manure, I mean, in some countries. But we had a project. We had a project that every one of us had to pick a crop, and just based on starch, sugar, everything like that, the breakdown, was that going to make a good biofuel? Like corn makes ethanol, sunflower seeds, so on. So we could pick any crop we wanted. And I'm being here from Marathon County, I picked ginseng. And I gave my report, and Dr. Jones said, Wenzel, if you ever do that, that is probably the dumbest thing anybody has ever done, with the exception of putting up a wind turbine. So, a lot of people like to listen to, Dr. Jones is a pretty educated guy. Doctors, lawyers, things like that. You listen to them, you think, and they've got a lot more experience with this type of stuff, not just locally like we're dealing with. They have it all over the place, wherever these guys come from and wherever they go to study. And then just to branch off of this, just a couple of other experiences. Our family was just able to go down to Florida last week and went through Illinois, Aurora, Illinois, where they made Wayne's World. Really cool. You see all those blinking red lights? So we went through in the dark, but on the way back it's kind of dark. And I could see some of the wind, I mean, there's thousands of them. Thousands of blinking red lights. And all of a sudden I'd see a house right in the middle of all these wind turbines. And my thought was, one question to every one of those people: would you rather have these here or not have them here? I can't tell you what they said, but I'd say 99% of them said one answer. Then, to pigtail off of what these ladies said, just yesterday, I'm heading west of Colby on Highway N, beautiful farm country. Here's a little 2-acre plot fenced off with solar panels everywhere. Some people shaking their heads, they know that. And instantly I thought, I could take that down in a day. And then I thought, I'll never take down a wind turbine. So if that's on my property and this company says, you're out of luck, you're on your own. I'll take down solar. I have a lot of guys here. You got trucks, you got skid steers, you got hacksaws, whatever. We'll take them down. But no one's taking a windmill down. No one's getting rid of that concrete. And then are they going to decommission them? How many of us have something on our property we want to get rid of? An old building, a garage? We do. We all do. I got a room full of stuff at home I'd like to get rid of. I can't. No time. That's my stuff on my property. Now who's going to say, who's going to contact from Alliant or whoever to take that down? You can't take it down, it's too big. But it's on your property and you can't even take that down. You'll take the solar panels down, but no one's taking the windmill down. And then the other thing, we have any lawyers in here? No lawyers? You've had to deal with lawyers before? All right, so just being in business, I've had to deal with lawyers, I've had to deal with bigger companies than mine, so on. And do you think the solar companies, Alliant Energy, you think they got lawyers? Yeah, they got lawyers, and it's the only company they work for. They work for Alliant, they work for a solar company. I mean, any big company's got them. So, are you going to afford any lawyer, Mr. Juno, Lana Fede, Johnny Cochran could probably help you out, but you can't afford them. And are they going to have the beef to take on that company, especially when you sign a contract? So I've had to deal with this a little bit, throughout my time as a business owner. I'm sure a lot of you had to. Small town cases with your farm, maybe renting, so on. This is a different beast. These people, I'm sure, know exactly what they're doing, and we unfortunately don't know what they know, in my opinion. So you have to educate yourself, you have to get all the information you need. And then one other thing is, if any of us are business owners, or we're all consumers, right? The principal, fundamental law of economics is what? Supply and demand. Very good. In my opinion, how many of you are suffering for energy right now? You can't put the lights on. No Amish people here? Okay. There's not that, there hasn't been that. And that is because there is natural gas, there's coal, there is now in this area, I don't know how many of you know, we're burning biomass. Okay, so Dorhorse Wood Recycling in Auburndale, Kafka, Kafka Granite. Companies like that. I have a wood waste recycling facility. Some of my material goes to Dorhorst. They grind it up, it runs over to Domtar. Domtar creates the power that we have here. That's another thing. Alliant and all these other power companies, they have to, I don't know this for sure, but I'm pretty sure just like anybody buys a product, they have to buy that power from Domtar. They give it to us, and then we have to pay them for it. And I think that's how that works. But in my opinion, we don't have a demand for that type of energy system here, and we don't have the supply. That's why wind power is so inefficient. The supply isn't here. Maybe in Aurora, Illinois, that was flat. We went through there at night, and a good thing we were going with the wind. It's not everything is meant for every place. I personally don't think we have the supply, and you shouldn't have this. There's no reason to have supply if you don't have it. You don't even think about supply if you don't have the demand for it. There's no demand for it, you're not getting it. Okay, and that's an example of putting a massive structure, a couple thousand feet apart, with no demand and very little supply for that. And just let me check my notes. Oh, one last thing. You did mention coal. One thing that I just have this idea. If I were to ask, how many of you think we still use coal? I'm sure there's probably a few of us who would be like, coal is dirty. Didn't they ban that back in the 1800s? You know, when it's all you see is smoke rolling out. Coal is abundant and it's very clean. And it's a lot easier to harvest than wind. Much easier. And there's a huge economic impact in the United States for coal. Domtar burns coal. We burn coal in this area. All of our power plants do, for the most part. A combination of coal, biomass, and natural gas. So, I don't need to take up any more time. I don't need to ask for anybody got questions for me. You see me at the bar and we'll catch you a drink and we can talk a little bit later, but we'll turn it over to anybody else.
I'll just piggyback off that a little bit. So why do you think that these projects are really shooting up here in the last few years in the state of Wisconsin and across our country? Subsidies, very good. It's not just by accident, it's all about the money, right? So Biden was nice enough to pass a lot of subsidies towards green energy, and this is the result we're getting. So when you subsidize something, you get more of it. And there's a lot of money out there, and Evers is pushing it out as fast as he can. So.
So yeah, a question about the subsidies and the incentives. I mean, you mentioned that the township might only get $216K per year. Per turbine, you get 216?
No, that's annually
So,
for all the townships.
Okay, so that's not an incentive to do this at all. So where's the incentive for us?
That's it. You get
The landowners get
The landowners,
lease money?
the landowners get paid for the contract for hosting.
A lot?
I'm not going to go into the numbers on that.
Nobody's offered me anything, so I can't.
I'm sure.
Anyone else?
I don't.
You don't need it?
Kevin Schmidt, Town of Day. Biggest thing is, what I've learned from listening to you ladies, and thank you all for doing this, is the state, the guys in Madison, they don't care. The best I can come up with is if our little townships can stick together, we need to work on Marathon County Board. if we could get, Marathon County Board had the opportunity, don't ask me what it was, I just remember hearing about it. They had the opportunity to sign against this, okay? If we learned anything from our last election, we learned that if all the small people stick together, we can beat Madison. But that's what we need. It don't pay to go, and I know some of the politicians, so if they want to yell at me, that's fine. The politicians ain't going to help us here. They're not going to go down to Madison, pick a chair up and throw it across the aisle, because then they won't get what they want. So we need to stick together as townships, and we need to pound on Marathon County Board to get them to support us townships. If we could get Marathon County on board to sign this, I almost guarantee you got 4 other counties that would jump on. You know, and if we can start getting a couple counties, now you've got some money to support this. And it's all about the money. And Madison is not going to help us. Waiting for Madison is, you're going to wait.
So what we learned from the Marathon County Board and the Town Association when it comes to the lawyers is that the lawyers don't see any gray area in the law. This is why we went to the legislative lawyers. This is also why a lot of your townships are being told that they cannot pass these ordinances, even though we obviously can. But we don't see a lot of help currently from the Marathon County Board. They're very, very scared of adopting these ordinances, and what we're told way back when is that they didn't want to adopt them because they didn't want to get sued. So now we have our 2 townships getting sued. So I find that very, very concerning. We're obviously going to keep trying to work with them and keep educating them what's going on, but it might be a really long, long road as well.
Does it look like we have a chance of not having this work?
If we stand together, we have a chance, or we can at least give them help.
So the landowners who signed on, they're locked in, they can't even back out?
Correct?
They can't back out of that deal at all?
So what we've seen from other contracts, these were mostly in Clark County, is that people do not get let out of the contracts. It's obviously up to the individual and the company to negotiate that, and they do that one-on-one. But we do not know of anybody who's been let out of a contract yet in any of the project we work with.
So if townships incentivize the program through taxation, then the townships tax the landowners with a single tax, rezone them to industrial, or whatever it is tax them enough to incentivize the townships.
I am sorry, I do not know the answer to that. That would probably take a really good town lawyer to help you out with. It's definitely an idea. Several towns have done different kind of zoning things that goes with these projects. A lot of people look at these going on farmland, and they don't think that works together with farmland preservation, for example. But that's just some of the things people have done.
Is that something that one of these parties work on?
We can definitely ask that question of the attorney. So.
So, the company I work for does a lot of work in Iowa, and I've got friends in Iowa who are farmers. What they presented tonight is correct. They post this big dollar amount to you, you sign on, and they are only getting 5 years, 7 years, somewhere of that nature. What the farmers are finding out, the funds that are getting back are very minimal compared to what they were guaranteed. When you sign the contract, you basically sold it. You have no rights. They can do whatever they want. And they can run their transmission lines wherever they
Is there, and I'm not bashing you girls, okay?
Bring it on, Kevin.
Is there any way we can change the word? Because when we say it, everybody says solar farm, wind farm. Can we change it to project? I heard it on the radio yesterday, they called it a park. I mean,
Complex. It's
yeah.
an industrial complex. Basically, you end up living in a energy industrial complex. It just takes out, you know, hundreds of acres, thousands of acres in this area.
Yeah.
Sounds great, right?
Yeah, I mean, and it's,
Must be great.
the problem is when you start talking farms, everybody thinks of calves and kitties and stuff like that, and they don't realize that this isn't a farm. It's not a solar farm. It's, so I'm just asking, you know, if we can try to.
They name the projects the farm though. I tried to avoid that when I was talking. Marathon Wind, it is called Marathon Wind Farm LLC. That is how it is up at the courthouse on the documents for the lawsuit. Hub City Wind Farm, not Wind Project, Wind Farm. So
So if you live next to one, your property guy,
What do you think?
obviously it's going to be hard to sell. Therefore, when the township comes around and you're in the middle and wants to raise your taxes, so building prices, inflation, that would be a lot. So in McMillan, we're pushed by the fire department. They need our tax money. The way getting it is our value goes down. We have school districts. We have Marshfield, and Stratford. And West. That's going to hurt them in one. If you sign a land up for it, you got to think, you might be biting off your own nose. You're going to take money away from your own people. And if you turn around and sell your place, you're going to get pennies on the dollar for what you build.
And that contract stays with the land. Even though you might sell it, or if you die and you pass it on to the next generation, that contract stays with that land for as long as it's valid.
and that is one of the issues that is addressed in these ordinances that we are talking about that the other towns have already passed. That's, you know, part of the ordinance. There's a provision in there to hold the company accountable for real property loss, the value loss of that. Well, that's, right, but that's what's in the ordinance, and that's one of the things that, you know, is there to try to either hold them accountable or maybe thwart them from actually, you know, putting them.
If you were to keep the corporate here, by the time you get money back from them, you're probably dead, and your kids are grandparents. So if you really got to think about this, we put power in the hands of your friends. Control how small it is. That's what we're doing when we sign up for this.
Has anyone tracked how much of a hardship it is to the residents in the area?
That's what the shared revenue is intended to do for the towns and the county, is to make up for the lost tax revenue that we're giving up. I guess you'd have to ask one of the representatives from the company.
It depends on, you know, how big the project is and the capacity of the project is how the formula is made, and then it's mandated by Madison.
I think the binder says that it's maxed out at $500,000 annually. I think the binder says that it's maxed out at $500,000 annually for the town and the county together, the towns and the county together.
If someone puts up a windmill, how does it get back to the place where it's needed? If my neighbor puts one up and they have to go across my land to get it where it's needed, what's my plan?
Well, the contract states that you can either sign up your land for, you can have the possibility of getting a turbines, or you can have the possibility of getting lines running through your land that just transport the power, and you're paid according to what's on your land. So if you get a turbine, you obviously get paid more. If you just get the lines through your land, you obviously get paid less.
So what is the option for not going through my land? So you have no no recourse.
I have not seen eminent domain used yet.
It will.
Some of this isn't right, okay? That's not how he's gonna work, so it doesn't just transfer to another power company, right? Each power company has to go separate easement. They have to pay for that, or they get off the road right away. Most of what we're talking about for the size isn't gonna be looking at huge transmission lines. That's why they have to have a substation that's a separate right? So it's gonna be typically the same lines that you have out here. You have to kind of understand how the whole grid system works. Okay, if you can imagine the whole grid system within the US as like a water tank, okay, a huge water tank. So when your calls are drinking, you got your water turned on. Calls quick drinking, your water has to turn on, right? So one of the things they never turn off is renewable. If renewable works, it's on, always. Then you have your base ones that are always on. That's usually your nuclear, your coal, gas fired. Then you have what are called peaking plants, or the marginal plants. Okay, so as the usage goes up, we have to turn the peak plant on, pick up the power, and get enough to everybody's out there. The grid is currently at 100%, has been in Wisconsin for a number of years. We need more infrastructure. I'm not in the power company anymore, and I think a lot of you know my feelings on green power. And I won't get into that. But what really frustrates me is we're taking down coal-fired plants, that the emissions coming out of it is cleaner than the surrounding area. And where are those coal-fired plants going? And I've asked this to senators and congressmen in Minnesota, where are they going? Well, China and India are putting on 50 of them this year. Where the hell do you think they're going? And I doubt they're going to go with all the EPA restrictions that the U.S. has. So as long as you're worried about the environment, I guess it's going to be Pluto over there, it doesn't matter. So that's one of the things that it really frustrates me.
Can I ask you to talk in the mic? I'm having a hard time with it. Did you say the power that is generated from these turbines is going to overseas?
No. The old power plants that were being taken down, the coal-fired plants that were very efficient, very clean burning. In fact, some of the studies show that the emissions coming out of these coal-fired plants is cleaner than the surrounding air, okay? But we're still being forced to take them down. Then they're getting salvaged, and where are they going? China and India, because they're putting on 50 of them as of last year. So that's what this whole problem is. So, you can put a green power because we're still the US, right? So do you want to go ahead with this? But I would highly caution you at this point with the current regime, and whether you like President Trump or not, I'm willing to bet money that this money's gone. He's a fan of green power, and he said this before, green that stays in your pocket. And it's not wind, it's not solar. At least on solar, I can make a little bit better argument for it, at least with what Xcel Energy was doing with solar. Because they were putting in solar farms, but underneath it they were putting in bee apiaries. So at least you're getting double usage of the land. Wind, nothing, and it's dirty power. When I talk about dirty power, you have a sine wave on your electric system, right? So that how everything functions, nice and clear. Wind couldn't be further from the truth on that. So.
Did you say you think the money is going to be bought with these subsidies?
Yeah. If I was betting my whole bank account, my house, my land, absolutely. I don't think it's going to stay. I just.
But to answer your question, so in Iowa, the majority of that power coming from the windmills goes directly to Chicago. We're going to go to Minneapolis. Those are the areas that are hurting when it goes back to the supply and demand. So all these rural areas are going to have the impact and the benefit on those somewhere else.
He's 100% right on that, because probably about 15 years ago, retail wheeling was a big thing in the state of Wisconsin, right? And that's when we were worse at our peak than we are now as far as what our grid could handle. So everybody was talking about retail wheeling so we could buy cheap electricity from Canada, we could get it from other areas. Do you think, if I was in the power trade, nothing against farmers, do you think I'm gonna sell it to you for 5 cents a kilowatt hour, or am I gonna sell it to a factory where I can get $50 a kilowatt hour? I love you guys, but you ain't getting it. One of the things we said about the windmills, you said was, how many megawatts, do you remember? So if we put it in perspective, Marshfield, the whole city of Marshfield, their surrounding area, they go out probably 8 to 10 miles each way. Their peak is like 66 megawatts. So that just to give you kind of an idea how many of these we need just to power the city of Marshfield.
Me again. So the biggest thing though, what everybody in this room has to understand is we've all been to town board meetings. I was just at a county meeting for the manure thing. At the county meeting, there was 7 people there. I can go to town a day board meeting most any month. If I walk in, I'm the 3rd person. Okay? So we can all sit here tonight and complain, but if we don't go to our township meetings and push the town boards to sign this, and if we don't go up to Marathon County meetings, even if you know the town board, the people on Marathon County, if we're not sitting in that room, they're not going to care about us. Plain and simple. So we all sit here tonight and talk good, but if we're not going to these meetings, and all the meetings are during the afternoon, shocker. So the manure one was, I think, at 2 or 3 o'clock. So, but I'm just saying, we can complain tonight, but if we leave this building and we don't go to our town boards and start hammering them with full houses, and the county, we all might start pouring concrete.
Well, it's very clear when you don't do anything, you're just tacitly agreeing to it, correct? This is why we are sitting here. Me, I didn't even know Rebecca 2 years ago. I didn't know Wendy 2 years ago. We are here because we're seeing a problem and we're just making people aware of what's going on so that you can make an informed decision on what you need in your township. That's what we did in every township. The vast majority of people that live around here do not want these projects. We approved at time and time again when people are passing these ordinances in the township, they pass 97 to 3, 95 to 5. When I ran for assembly last summer, every township that had passed these ordinances voted for me overwhelmingly. This was the only thing I ran on last summer, and I did it to make a point. The people of Wisconsin don't want these projects here. But it comes down to you. You cannot go home and watch TV. You will have to go to your town board meetings. You will have to ask to pass the ordinances. And it doesn't stop there. After you pass the ordinances, you still have to enforce them. You still have to back them up. This is why we're trying to collect money for Brighton and Plain. They're the spearhead of this. Hopefully, this lawsuit is where the whole thing ends, right? And we won't all have to go through a lawsuit. Because I can guarantee you, if Brighton and Plain fails, they're going to come after us next, and the next township. So we need to stand together to do this. We're just trying to provide you with some details on what's going on and some ordinances that you might be interested in passing in your township. You tell everybody to take them home, read them, fit them to your township, obviously.
I just want to touch on what he said earlier about taxes. Say him and I own an equal value house. He has a window, I live in a subdivision, I bury my head in the sand and say, oh, screw up, he's getting a window and he can lose his property value. That doesn't mean that the town collects less taxes. What that means is the town says we need this amount of taxes, he's paying half as much, I have to pick up the other half. So taxes in the town don't go down because land values go down, they just hit you harder per dollar in valuation. If kids is half of my age, I end up paying twice as much as either 1.5 times what he is. So don't think because property values go down, your taxes go down. The town says I need $1 million and I got $10 million in valuation. Here's what we're going to hit you for 1,000. It never goes down. They just hit you hard. And if he's got less now, I got to pay more. Just as an example. So if you're in a subdivision and say, I don't want to feel the same right now. It is. It truly is.
I just was wondering if there's anyone, like a township official from the town of Delaware here. I don't mean to put you on the spot or you but I'm just curious why the town hasn't passed the ordinance that the other towns have.
that hasn't been proven, one thing, and we do have an ordinance for nuisances that covers obstacles and ladies and all that kind of stuff. So we are partially covered at this point. So we just have not yet adopted that ordinance at this point. The board hasn't voted on it.
So, Debbie, if someone brings that up, we can have that discussion and vote on it at one of our meetings.
We got an annual meeting coming up that day with places start and see which one's on it and which one's not.
So Tom McMillan annual meeting is coming up April 15th. April 15th, please try to be in attendance.
Can I ask Debbie, is any one of our current town board members signed up into this project? Open the school?
Any of our board members signed up? That I don't know. I have 1 acre of land, so I'm not.
So just to make it clear, it does say in the contract that if you're an official representative of a town or something else and you sign one of these, you're supposed to let the people know in your township. You should not keep it a secret.
Who actually owns the wind turbine equipment? Does the line ownership take over ownership of them, or does it stay with the company that's putting them in and building them up?
So as I understand, the Line Energy project is a little different than the EDP project on this because the Line is actually the one doing it and the one running it. Most of the projects you see in the state of Wisconsin are put up by a developer and then sold to the energy company later, but a Line is an exception to this. That also makes them a public utility right off the bat.
But are they also under three different? When you become a utility, right, you only take care of the distribution. You've got transmission that's a separate company, it wouldn't be a third company generation before. So the point I'm trying to make is if they're keeping it in-house, there was a state statute, and I'm not sure of it anymore, but you had to buy back the electricity that's produced at the wind farm at not the cost that we would pay for. Okay? Say we can get it for 10 cents a kilowatt hour. That's not what they're buying it back for. They're buying it back for 10 cents a kilowatt hour, plus the infrastructure, plus the stranded costs, like your overhead. So you're actually paying way more than you can get it for on the open market. So when they're saying you're going to offset your tax revenue, I'm pretty sure you're going to see that increase on your electric bills also. Because they have to cover it somewhere.
Right, so we all know that when we do expansions on our farms or in our businesses, there's a huge amount of overhead that needs to be covered that usually gets passed down, or as farmers I pay for my own, right? But I mean, that's also what we're seeing is that your energy prices are going to go up for at least a number of years before they stay or level back out. So yes, new development is going to create higher prices.
Anyone else have a question, comment? Yes.
Has anybody said that there's any projects that can get started at any point in time?
So the EDP project in Brighton and O'Plain was actually ready to start. They've been at EDP for I think 6 years now. They passed the ordinances ahead of them actually starting to build, which is what halted the project, right? So one of the very important things that Wendy said in regards to the lawsuit was that the judge in January just told them that they cannot proceed building while the lawsuit is ongoing, because if the lawsuit stands, they would have to take it all back down, right? So right now the EDP project is halted. That's the Marathon Wind LLC is called. So I guess I could tell you that last year, right a week after our annual meeting last year, we had a Met Tower put up in Town a Day. So that's your mediatical tower for this project, or at least one of them for this project. They usually put them up, they test the wind speeds, they see how everything is, they see if it's a good placement for their project. 2 years later, they take them down after the study is done. They get a yay or a nay, and they kind of continue the process thereafter. So that tower has already been up for a year. So this is something that's been ongoing for a while. We learned about this when they came to sign up a neighbor of mine 2 years ago. That was, well, 2.5 years ago, because in 2023, we in Town of Day passed the wind ordinance as one of the first ones. In 2024, we passed the solar ordinance. And here in 2025, we're going to pass the battery storage ordinance. Or at least if the township wants it, obviously. So this has been going on for a long time. Now, why didn't you guys know about it sooner? Because they didn't tell you. They just go out to your neighbors and they talk to your neighbors and they tell them not to tell anybody, or only tell people that they want to sign up. So is that fair? Well, kinda, I guess, but I don't think, considering the impact on the community, that it's okay. Especially.
Have you heard any of the testing coming off that tower that I stared at?
I don't think we get to hear any of that. No. I don't know where we would get the information from.
That's why it's important to go. That's why it's important to go to your town board meetings, because these things go through and the town board thinks that nobody cares, nobody's there, and so it's never brought up. If you don't read the minutes, if you're not there, you're not gonna know about it.
They put that up under the, more of the weather.
No, so the Mediatico towers here has no rules or regulations from the PSC. They can pop them up whenever they want, wherever they want. No state regulation. And we cannot regulate that either, I guess.
So where is that? Did you say meteorological?
Yeah.
Okay, where is that?
It's in the town of Day. It's about a half a mile north out of Russellville.
Is it on private property or public property?
It's on private property.
And they just installed it without the owner's knowledge?
No. Of course the owner would know, but the town weren't really told anything until about 3 days before they did it. All right.
My question is, the townships only gets X number of dollars, okay? So for easy figuring, say, we get $5,000 a year for whatever number of windmills we have. Everybody knows the word inflation nowadays, so that number stays the same. You know, this money's supposed to offset the property tax valuation. So the cost of fixing the roads, doing work keeps going up, but if that number stays the same, you know, do they increase that number every year? Is there a limit on it?
From what it looks like, so the contract says that they increase their payments 2.5% yearly, and I believe it's the same thing for your cost share, but it also depends on that formula that's created by Madison.
But don't those windmills have to create so much energy before you even get paid?
Yes, it depends on the output. So when you make those, I'm sorry, it's a long formula, right? It depends on the output of the turbine, the size of the turbine, the size of the project. There's lots of variables to this. So yes, there's a number in the folder. The folders are readily available, you know, but that's only if they're operating at full capacity and everything goes perfectly.
They probably have a percentage, so let's say they gotta operate at 80% to pay out. Every one of them's gonna operate at 79%. Let's get that straight right in the room right now. They're not gonna pay out. There's not gonna be any money. And the sad thing is, the people that signed up for this, it's a scam. They got scammed. They're already sunk. They just don't know it yet. That's the sad thing.
Most of them are the large farmers that want to get bigger.
Huh?
Most of them are the large farmers that want to get bigger.
Oh yeah, it's all a money game. There's no green. You're not saving the environment with these. Sorry.
Well, we'll be here for quite a while longer if anybody. Yeah, absolutely.
Just to maybe give you some hope. I'm originally from Indiana, and I have a brother down in Indiana, and he and his group, they were going to put wind farms in their area, and they fought it for a long time too. And I'm just kind of reading what he had said to me, just to give you guys a couple ideas here. A couple of things, when they come in and put in the turbines, they put in a lot of rock usually, take off the topsoil. That topsoil is never coming back. So even if they come back, take down the windmill and everything, and they'll leave the rock, the topsoil is gone, your land's worthless. I don't own a farm, I just live in a little 5-acre, 10-acre lot, so. But anyway, so that's kind of sad. But he also did say that they worked for a long time, and I said, in the end, what happened? And he said that eventually they worked with their commissioners, and convince them by telling them another big problem with the wind turbines is that, for instance, if Marshfield ever expanded into Marathon County, which would, McMillan, I should say, Township, that's where I live, there was no control over how things expanded because the turbines were in the way. You know what I mean? So instead of a controlled city or controlled however our planning wants to be, it was gone because all of a sudden, you know, it's a controlled sprawl. So that's another good thing to think about. But in the end, they did stop. The company actually came back and canceled the leases with the farmers because the county said, nope, we don't want to do it. So the little towns all around got together, worked really, really hard, and they stopped it, and the farmers got their money back. They got out of the contracts. So I don't know how much advancement they went through, you know what I mean, putting up towers and that kind of thing, but there is hope. And it was a big, big project. It's right close to the Illinois project, somebody said they went up and you see all the thousands of wind turbines. So they prevented it from happening. He's like in the middle of the state of Indiana. Completely flat, great place for wind turbines, but they didn't get them. So there's hope.
Okay, so we got Assembly Bill, is it 3? No, it's Assembly Bill 7, and it's Senate Bill 3. And they're both put out by Tranel's office. So Travis Tranel is our Ag Secretary here in the state of Wisconsin, and he's the one that spearheaded this. Lots of senators and assemblymen have already signed on to this. Most of the ones from our area is already co-sponsoring. Karen Hertz co-sponsoring, Spiros is on there, Corey Tomchak is on there. This is an ongoing thing. But Tom Tiffany is with us, yes. Ben Orden is with us. But to be very clear, these have to pass with a supermajority so that it cannot be vetoed. Evers is going to veto these 2 bills. He has vetoed several similar bills in the past. So if you want any chance of this, we need to convince a lot more people in Madison that they need to approve these bills when they come through. So here's a great opportunity for you farmers out there or Farm Bureau members. On March 26th, we have Ag Day at the Capitol. I just got made a board member of Marathon County Farm Bureau, so if you want to talk about it, you come talk to me. If you're a member, you can come with us. We're going to go down to Madison for the day, and we're going to start knocking on doors. And I mean all the doors. And this is something we're doing statewide. So we're going to go down, we're going to talk to our representatives, and we're going to tell them exactly what the people of Wisconsin want. Because I'm guessing they would like to get elected again at some point. This is our biggest poll, is your votes. If you don't vote, you don't have a say. So if you don't know when your next election is, it's April 1st. It's a really important election. You got lots of really good stuff on there. Please go to My Vote Wisconsin. You can look up your bill, you can see exactly what's on there. If you're in the town today, you can vote for me and Rebecca, just for the fun of it. But it's really important that we vote all the time. So, for example, let's say this lawsuit ends up in the Wisconsin Supreme Court, right? Right now, the Wisconsin Supreme Court is left-leaning. But on April 1st, we have an election for another judge on the Supreme Court. It would be Brad Schimmel. And if Brad Schimmel gets on the court, we now have a conservative court. So at least we might have a chance that if this bill goes this far, this lawsuit goes this far, we might actually have a chance of getting a fair hearing. So that would be a good start. So voting is important in every election. All right, going once, going twice. Everybody ready for a beer? All right, we'll be hanging around. Come talk to us. We'll have a beer, and thank you guys so much for coming out. Lots of information over there. Have a good day.
Well,
That's who I'm trying to, yes, not say. Farms, see, he has 1,000 acres.